A very, very good evening. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Welcome to a brand new look on a number of fronts. Primarily, as you can see, I have finally had that much-needed haircut. My wife dispatched me to the hairdresser and insisted that I get a trim. The trim has been done, and I no longer need to wear hats and beanies as props on the show. But also in terms of the new look, we're using a brand new platform today, which we're playing around with. So after a few gremlins over the last week or two, we decided we'd upgrade and see what we could come up with. And hopefully this one delivers a little more. So we're having a little bit of fun today, and we're having some fun, I hope, with two fantastic guests. One of them we have been having one or two little technical challenges with, so I'm hoping you'll see her a little later. We will find out. If not today, we'll get her back on again soon. But if we do get her on, she's somebody who you'll recognise if you have watched Dan Really Likes Wine, because last year we featured her on the show. Her name is Brenda Karamba, and she has a wonderful, wonderful story, a Zimbabwean factory worker who is now one of the most respected sommeliers in Stellenbosch. And what a town to be a respected sommelier in. And provided we can get to Brenda, we'll try a couple of bottles of her favourite wine. But we start off with an estate that I have spent a lot of time on when I still lived in Cape Town. The golf course was a regular destination. I got a number of friends who live at the estate, a terrific little bistro. They also make some rather nice wines. One of those wines is a Bubbles, and so as I have A, a new haircut, and B, a brand new platform, I thought celebration was the order of the day. So we kick off by saying a very good evening to Elunda Basson. Hello, Elunda.
Hi, good evening, Dan, and all your viewers. Welcome to Steenberg.
It's great to be here. I feel very far away from the winelands in general, but particularly those estates that I know really well. And yours would be one of them. I've spent many hours looking for golf balls in the rough at Steenberg, and then drowning sorrows with a few glasses of wine afterwards. It's a fabulous place to call home, and it's one that you haven't called home for that long now, because after a glittering career making bubbles in a rather different part of the wineland, you're now, just a couple of years into your tenure at Steenberg?
Yes, I celebrated my 12 months on the 1st of June. So, yep, 1 year.
It's been quite an interesting move for you, because you've gone from being probably Peter Ferreira's only real competition in South Africa for defining expert on the art of making Cap Classique, which, for those of you who don't know, is French champagne just better because it's made in South Africa, and moved over to Steenberg as JD made his way off to Warwick. You've got loads of winemaking experience, obviously time at Congress, time at Anita Berg, but you're now in a space where, yes, the Cap Classique is a big part of what you make, but it's certainly not the only part. You've got a lot of still wine and a lot of very highly regarded still wine to make. How much fun, how challenging has that transition been?
Yeah, I suppose that's a fair question after my first vintage. Thanks, Dan. And what a challenging first 12 months at a new winery and a new winemaking team with COVID-19 thrown in there. But I think just looking back in my career, this has been by far the best decision I've ever made. Yes, I suppose it's taken me out of my comfort zone, where I've really grown and developed and learned a lot and understood a lot about Cap Classique making. But it's really given me an opportunity as a winemaker and as a now more senior winemaker in the wine industry to really hone my techniques on still wines and to get back to some varietals which I haven't been working with for many, many years. But I think the big drawing card was Wine of Origin Constantia, this extremely beautiful terroir, and the opportunity to work with these beautiful still wines, to get back to working with Sauvignon Blanc as a cultivar and as the flagship of Steenberg. And so why not? This is by far the best midlife crisis you could ever imagine.
I can think of worse ways to celebrate midlife, although I think you're still a little way off getting there. You've made this transition. A lot of the people who watch Dan Really Likes Wine are people who are reasonably early on in their wine journey, and some of the more technical side of wine is still a work in progress, as it is for me. I learn about wine every day in every show and every conversation I have on the subject. Very broadly speaking, using language we can all understand, what's the quintessential difference between just making bubbles and now making still wine as well? What's the crux of that gap?
Ooh, so I think with making especially Cup Classique, the technical understanding of the intrinsic of the product lies in the second fermentation in the bottle, the aging and the development of those tertiary flavors in the bottle. And I think in the Cup Classique category, maybe terroir and wine of origin is a little less important, because the best Cup Classiques are a blend of using grapes from different origins. Whereas I think in the case of Steenberg and its still wines, the challenge is understanding the complexity of the terroir, so our sense of place, what grows best here, and how to express that sense of place into something that is true to Steenberg. And I think that's the challenge, is understanding still wines in terms of vineyards and what that microclimate gives you to work with in the cellar, because still wines start in the vineyards.
It's such an interesting challenge, and you're only that one vintage in, so there's a long way to go on this journey. But it's one you've clearly sunk your teeth into, and not just from the winemaking, but this community as a whole, and the cool stuff you do. And Steenberg has a habit of doing some fun stuff, which leads me to this rather mysterious envelope, because you very kindly sent me a box of wine, and thank you, Elunda, most generous of you. And I opened it up, but there was also in here an envelope. I'll read it out to you, which says Steenberg Cellar at Home, a Steenberg tasting experience in your home. So I haven't opened it yet. What I'm expecting is just a piece of paper that tells me when you're arriving with your team to come and taste in my living room. I'm going to open it up now. It's a really cool concept. You've got 3 different boxes. People can order them, and yes, you can order wine from anybody. Lots of wine estates, lots of wine farms have those wine boxes, but you guys are taking it a step further, because with the help and instructions in this envelope, and be careful not to tear that, because that's your QR code, which is rather important. There are a whole lot of supplementary experiences to the tasting that almost bring the cellar into your house.
Yes, I think if you think of the Steenberg experience that you enjoy when you visit the farm, that's really quintessentially what we were trying to capture with this Steenberg Cellar at Home experience. Is we know how many of our customers out there are longing to come back and visit us on the farm, visit the cellar door, do our classic tastings with us, listen to all the storytelling behind the brand, and enjoy these beautiful wines with us. And unfortunately, at the moment, the cellar door is not open for tastings. So we thought we'd try and bring that experience to you at home, where you can safely enjoy your favorite Steenbergs, and maybe even rediscover Steenberg and some of the wines that you don't know that we produce. So that's exactly what you're getting in your envelope. You're getting a little QR code that you can scan. Then you're going to be delighted by some beautiful video clips done with some of our staff, telling you all the stories behind our wines and our brand. And together with that, a little booklet that gives you little tasting notes and explanations on all the wines in the Steenberg range.
I think it's a really cool idea. It's really fun, and it speaks to the creativity which every industry has had to embrace in order to keep going in these very strange times of ours. That is the booklet that was being mentioned by our ace winemaker, the Steenberg collection, and it's got that full collection, all of the wine that they have there, and then with your QR code, you'll get all the detail that you require. There we go. So you can have a chance to kind of have a look at that. So let's move on then to our very first wine, and that is the one which I'm particularly excited about drinking because I'm in a celebratory mood, and also you're in a celebratory mood. You've got your 12 months under the belt, but also because it's one that I think everybody will be watching with great excitement, Elunda, because you've made so much Cup Classique over the years. The French would have poached you by now if they could, but you're far too good for them. And you've now got to take wine from an estate that is really well celebrated, really well documented, and now give it your own particular touch.
Yes, absolutely. So I have to be honest, it was probably one of the drawing cards behind the decision to move to Steenberg was the fact that I already loved the bubblies that they were producing. And to be able to work with this beautiful Cup Classique is just such a privilege for me. It's already a beautiful wine, and we're just hoping that, you know, we can take that to the next level within the next few years. I think what's unique about the Steenberg Chardonnay 1682 is that it's a pure Blanc de Blanc, so it's a pure Chardonnay. Blanc de Blanc being extremely trendy in Cup Classique terms. It has been trending for quite some time in terms of French champagnes as well. And it's just a beautiful expression of what makes Blanc de Blanc stunning and stand out, and a little different from a blend of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier. And a bubbly that we're very proud about. I think a bubbly that on shelf, in terms of look and feel, also stands out. And in the category of Blanc de Blancs in South Africa, really, we like to consider ourselves as one of the best. I think the wine has a nice balance between a good proper time on lease, which nowadays is a minimum of 12 months for Cup Classique. And we have some beautiful nutty brioche kind of characters coming through on the nose and the aroma, which is brought to us because of that time on lease. But on the other hand, nice, crispy, fresh green apple and a wonderful natural acidity, which is always important in a Blanc de Blanc.
Certainly is. I want to say a quick hello to a few people who tuned in. Melissa Sutherland is a great supporter, throwing back to the idea of the tasting at home, the interactive space. A great idea, especially before we can take clients to the winery, so a nice warm-up. Kate Sherry in Belfast, Northern Ireland, a great interactive concept. Skulk Cape Blend Stapelberg would be a great tool to take the brand abroad. Well done. And then on to this current wine. There we go. We've got Shane Dean, one of my favorite bubblies, and Annie Carlisle. Kids love the 1682 classiest label too. And there's a real feeling of weight and of gravitas to this particular bottle. It's very hard to miss, and so it sets itself up for something special. And then you drink it. It most certainly is. I love this. I've drunk plenty of it. Is it possible? It's one of those which is your favorite children questions, I suppose. You've got so many different styles of Cup Classique that you can make and that you have made in the various spaces that you've worked over the years. Is there one that's got a really special place in your champagne bottle-sized heart?
Ooh, yeah, that's really not a fair question, Dan. And it's really not easy to answer. I guess I've always felt that for every occasion, there's a specific bubbly that's suited to the occasion. So on a Monday evening with some girlfriends, there'll be a specific one. It might be a nice brut rosé. On a Wednesday date with my husband and having some oysters and sushi, it'll definitely be a Blanc de Blanc. And then on a really special birthday dinner, celebrating someone, someone's birthday, there'll definitely be a proper brut with long time on lease. I'm kind of thinking a special vintage of Lady R.
Oh.
To ask, but I think that's the beauty of bubbly and Cup Classique, is that there really is a sparkling wine for every occasion. And life's too short, and you can't just stick to one favorite. You've got to have lots of them.
You're a wise woman, Elunda. Advice to heart. I'll also tell you, just before we wrap up with the bubbles, if you look out on your estate, there is a family, the De Souzas, of Portuguese origin, Adrian and Fiona and their children. Fiona De Souza looks disconcertingly like Karen from Will and Grace, and she basks in your bubbles every day of the week. So you've got a particularly good fan, and I think many, not just around Steenberg, but around South Africa. So bubbles, we know you can make. It's you could do this blindfolded, really. So you need to impress us with something else. Now, I know this was made a little while back, so there are current vintages you're currently working on. But what it's important to do, I think, is to showcase a red from Steenberg, both because it's winter and living in Johannesburg in particular, you're freezing at the moment, but also because Steenberg's got such a great name for the bubbles, got such a great name for Sauvignon Blanc as well. Those would have been the easy two to go for, but I wanted to go for a red, and in this case, the stately Cabernet Sauvignon, partly because it is one of the selections in the box that you can get for tasting at home, but also because I think it's a great example of the red wine capability of Steenberg in particular and your broader area in general.
Yes, I'm actually quite glad that we're doing a red wine, because I think often people have preconceived ideas about what Constantia is good for. And we make some amazing red wines. So I'm glad that we're tasting Stately. It's a beautiful Cab Shiraz blend. It's good for this kind of weather. Since the interview started, we've had a massive downpour outside the tasting room window. We're desperately in need of water, obviously, so we're all very happy. But I think in an hour or so, when we have supper in front of the fireplace, the Stately is going to go down very delicious. And I think, so wine of origin, Constantia, we're probably looking at the biggest varietals down in the valley being Merlot and Cab and Bordeaux blends. But I think Steenberg Stately is a really great, easy drinking, beautiful Cab Shiraz blend that shows beautiful cherry, kind of red berry flavors, a little bit of toasty tobacco, and just a beautiful amalgamation of the best of these two red varietals.
Well, that is lovely. There's a general sense, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but my general sense is that the reds we get in Constantia, it's more of the slightly bigger stuff, the bolder stuff, the slightly broader shoulders, and really delivered about, I think of some of the Constantia Glen 5 as a good example. Wine that inspired a lot by Bordeaux and giving you the kind of wine that once you hit winter and Cape Town turns into Wales for 3 months, you've got exactly the right bottle of wine to get you through some pretty cold and nasty times.
Yes, Dan. And I think something else that might also be interesting to listeners and for people to understand about a cooler climate like Constantia is that on red wines and also on white wines, which is usually Sauvignon driven blends from Constantia, you really need to not be in a hurry. You need to take your time. You need to understand that cool climate wines need a little bit more time to open up, to develop, and to show their real beauty. So don't expect to rush out at the end of a harvesting season and find Constantia white wines on shelf of the current vintage. Our wines have high natural acidities. They have cool ripening seasons. And so these white wines and red wines really need proper time in the bottle, red wines need time in barrels and then time on cork. So don't be in a rush. You can go for the vintages because of the cooler climate, because of the natural acidity, they are all made in a long ageability style.
I suspect I'm going to have a very similar conversation this time next week, because next Thursday, Justin from Constantia Glen is one of my guests. We talk through the 3 and the 5 and get his thoughts. Another great winemaker in the valley. I want to double back quickly with a question on the bubbles. But before I do that, just a few more people. Lorraine Fenter's just opened her bottle of the Stately, and the smile emoji suggests she's thoroughly enjoying it. Scott Stapelberg, who has a medical condition, he thinks every single wine, white, rosé, or red, should have pinotage in it. Wants you to add some pinotage to this particular wine. He's obsessed, lovely guy, but obsessed, and does say that it's a lovely, lovely red. With regards to the bubbles, just going back to your area of expertise before we bid you farewell, the art of aging a Cup Classique, it's not something we often discuss in a great deal. We don't tend to think of vintage as being quite so important. Yet talk about champagne, and a bottle of vintage French champagne suddenly has this ring to it. What should we be doing? And does our Cup Classique have the ability? Does it deserve the extra time in cellar? Will it become a better wine for a few more years?
Dan, that's a loaded question, but a very important one, because I think South African Cup Classique consumers still have a little bit to learn about non-vintage style versus vintage style of Cup Classique. And if we just take it back in reference to champagne, a non-vintage blended wine is usually released into the market by the cellar when they feel that it's already done enough maturation and on release is ready to be enjoyed. Versus a vintage champagne is usually a wine that's made in such a style that the winery wants to express something very specific about that vintage, and it's proclaimed a vintage because of the quality rating of the vintage. So when you buy a vintage Cup Classique, usually the producer is trying to express something about a specific terroir or a specific vintage. So a certain style or certain characteristics in that wine that express a specific vintage. But in a vintage style, when we blend the wine prior to the bottling, we are having in mind that the consumer should be able to cellar and age this wine much longer than the non-vintage style. So often the price difference between a non-vintage and a vintage would be a little bit of a guide to the consumer. But we normally say non-vintage could be enjoyed at a younger age, so less maturation, where a special vintage wine should have the legs and the ageability and the quality to be able to mature in your cellar for recommended period of time, depending on what the policy is on the cellar.
Use Dan's basic guide to any vintage. Buy a case, open a bottle every year after the first few, see how they go, and then buy some more. Fascinating question in from Mark Shepton. Does Steenberg have microclimates in some vineyards, as some of the neighboring farms do?
Yes, definitely, Dan. We are situated about 6 kilometers to the False Bay coastline. We're the closest to the ocean of all the Constantia wine farms. And we have a difference in height of sea level on the farm. So we most definitely have a very wide range of different blocks of Sauvignon Blanc, and they express very different stylistic characteristics. And depending on those characteristics, the blocks are selected for different uses. So some blocks are selected for our Steenberg Sparkling Sauvignon Blanc, where some of them are selected for our Steenberg Sauvignon. Some are the best are selected for using in our Black Swan Sauvignon Blanc. And then, of course, we also have a Sauvignon Semillon blend in Magna Carta. And so stylistic differences within the microclimates in the different blocks are used to express different characteristics and used in different of our wines, most definitely.
The pieces of the puzzle that come together to make the different wines. It always fascinates me. Final one before we let you go and polish off the rest of that wine in the background. How important to you was it? And did you actually have it written into your contract that you would be able to eat whatever you wanted at Bistro 1682 whenever you wanted and indulge in what is one of the loveliest little bistros in the Cape?
It most definitely is one of the loveliest bistros in the Cape. And unfortunately, no. Little known to me, I should have probably had that written into my contract. But they look after me very well. And I know that everyone who loves Steenberg is looking forward to coming back and visiting our farm. And I guess Steenberg Cellar at Home is just us trying to share a little part of our farm with everyone until they can come back and enjoy our open spaces and our beautiful winery with us.
And until you are able to do that, remember there is that option to order the boxes, to get your little QR code and to taste at home with some really great additions. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing some secrets behind Enberg. I know it's very early on in the journey. Good luck with it. And we look forward to seeing how the future ventures unfold. Headlined by the bubbles, but with plenty of other great wines. Elunda, thank you very much indeed.
Cheers to your new hairstyle, Dan.
And much needed it is. I'm surprised my mother hasn't mentioned anything yet on this feed. I'm sure she'll be there shortly. So Elunda Basson, who is the cellar master at Steenberg, just celebrated 12 months in the job. Time at Anita Berg, time at Pongratz. She's making loads of great bubbles. I think she's still the deputy chairperson of the South African Cup Classique Association, behind Mr. Bubbles Ferreira. Obviously loves the bubbles, but some great other wines to work with. Not just the Sauvignon Blanc at Steenberg, but some terrific red as well. Right, now the moment of truth. We're on a brand new platform. It's the first day ever we are using this platform. And Ronaldo, my little Portuguese director, is working hard to string it all together. So I'm waiting to see if we have Brenda with us. I'm hoping that we do indeed. That is Brenda Karamba. I'm so excited because I was a little worried we'd let her down, but we've managed to get her back. Brenda, good afternoon. How are you? Oh, no, we can see you, but we can't hear you there, Brenda. Let's, the visual is one thing. Let's try again. Brenda, can you hear me now? Oh, we can hear Brenda, but we can see Brenda. We can't hear you, unfortunately, which is a dreadful shame. That was one of the issues we were having a little earlier. Maybe try unplugging the headphones, Brenda. Let's see if we can get you there. No, we're not hearing you there either. This is heartbreaking. Well, I tell you what we're going to do. I know, Brenda, I know you can hear me. So what I'm going to let everybody know, we've got until Monday, which is our next tasting, to get things sorted out. As I say, this is our very first day on a brand new system. And what we're going to do is hang on to these wines because we've got the Anvil, which is from Haskell in Stellenbosch. They're 2018. It's a lovely Chardonnay, and this was one of Brenda's two personal recommendations. And the other is the Kevin Arnold Shiraz, a wine you'll know well on this show, my wife's very favorite wine. And Kevin Arnold is, if you're a golfer, probably about a 3-wood up the road from Majeka House, which is a delightful little luxury hotel, boutique spot in the heart of suburban Stellenbosch. Stayed there many times, always had a great visit. But the best one by some distance was spending time there with Brenda as she took me through her wine list and also took me through her story. And that was why I wanted to have her on today. Although we've told it before, I love telling it again. Here's somebody who was a factory worker from Zimbabwe, who's worked her way up through a combination of passion, of determination, and the discovery of a love for wine, which is now translated into a great knowledge for and understanding of wine, and is now not just the restaurant manager at Majeka House, but also the head sommelier with a wealth of knowledge about wine. So we're going to bring Brenda back on Monday. By then, we'll hopefully have sorted out little issues we've had there. But a big, big thank you to Elunda Basson from Steenberg, who joined us and took us through that taste at home kit. You can head on to the Steenberg website, go and have a look for a few more details. And also look out for next week. We will be catching up with Justin from Constantia Glen. We're also hoping to speak to Joe Ferrarini from the Wine Show in England. He is on the horizon. And we've got a couple of other surprises up our collective sleeves. Big thank you too to Cully Swart from the Swartland Wine Collective, I think they call themselves, sent me up a quite staggering collection of the best of the Swartland, everything from Cully's own Porceleinberg through to wine from Ibn Sadi, from the Molyneux, from Adi Badenhorst, just this cracking selection. And we'll be trying out some of that over the next month or so. A big thank you to Ronaldo, first time out. Great effort. We'll see you back again 5 o'clock on Monday. Brenda Karamba will be amongst our guests. Apologies again for not having her today, not for want of trying. A couple of little technicals to iron out. But given this was our very first show with our new platform, I think we managed to go okay. And finally, from my dear mother, who is watching, love the hair, darling, even if it no longer reminds me of a 14-year-old you. Last word from my mum and no surprises. Have an absolutely fabulous rest of the week. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you back on Monday evening. And don't forget that wine now available, whether it is online or whether it is in store, the Pick and Pay Wine Club, giving you some great benefits, some great advantages, triple your smart shopper points, as well as a selection of discounts on a selection of wine. So look out for that. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Happy drinking. Thanks again to Elunda and Brenda, who will see you again on Monday. Cheers and goodbye.